On paper, this should have been the night Shedeur Sanders officially arrived in the NFL. A rookie quarterback, under brutal conditions, on a struggling Browns team that desperately needed a spark, and he delivered in a way almost nobody expected. He carved up the defense, kept Cleveland alive deep into the fourth quarter, and had fans in the stadium believing again. For a few hours, it felt like the Browns might have finally found their guy. But instead of celebrating a comeback story, everyone left talking about one confusing decision that changed the entire narrative. When the game was on the line, with momentum swinging and the crowd roaring, the Browns took the ball out of Shedeur's hands. What followed was a failed two-point attempt, and whispers started spreading almost immediately about what this really meant for Shedeur's future in Cleveland. Because here's the uncomfortable question no one wants to fully ask yet. Did the Browns just show the world they don't completely trust their own rookie quarterback? After everything Shedeur battled through to get here, the pressure of his last name, the doubts, the waiting, the limited opportunities, this was supposed to be his moment. Instead, it became the most controversial sequence of his young NFL career. Tonight, we're breaking down what really happened, what Shedeur said afterward. Long before Shedeur Sanders ever took a snap in the NFL, his path was already unlike anyone else's. Being the son of Deion Coach Prime Sanders meant his football life was never going to be quiet. Every throw, every mistake, every win, and every loss was going to be magnified. Some people saw privilege, others saw pressure. But what almost everyone agreed on was this: Shedeur didn't run from the spotlight. He leaned straight into it. From Jackson State to Colorado, he didn't just follow his father's coaching moves. He became the engine that made those programs matter. Week after week, he proved he could take hits, lead under chaos, and still deliver in the biggest moments. And yet, even with all those performances, the debate never really stopped. Critics questioned his arm strength. Others wondered if he was simply benefiting from the hype of the Sanders name. And when draft season arrived, the opinions were still split. That's what made Cleveland's decision so fascinating. When the Browns finally took their shot on Shedeur, it wasn't just a football move, it was a cultural one. The franchise that had spent decades searching for stability at quarterback suddenly tied its future to one of the most watched young players in America. Jerseys flew off shelves. Training camp clips went viral within minutes. The fan base, desperate for hope, latched on instantly. But inside the building, things weren't nearly as smooth as the headlines made it seem. Shedeur didn't walk in as the undisputed starter. He had to compete. He had to wait. And for weeks, he watched from the sidelines while fans argued online every Sunday about when the legendary era was supposed to begin. Every incomplete pass by the starter brought more pressure. Every loss brought louder calls for Shedeur to take over. And then, finally, the opportunity arrived. What most people didn't see during that waiting period was what Shedeur was really dealing with behind the scenes. New playbook, new speed, new locker room, new expectations, and all of it under the weight of one of the most famous last names in football history. He wasn't just trying to prove he belonged in the league. He was trying to prove he belonged on his own terms. That's what made his breakout performance hit differently. It wasn't just about yards or touchdowns. It was about validation, timing, and a young quarterback finally stepping into the moment he'd been preparing for his entire life. But as soon as it seemed like his story in Cleveland was finally turning a corner, something happened that would make everything feel uncertain again. When Shedeur finally got his moment under the bright NFL lights, it didn't come in perfect conditions. It wasn't a clear day, a clean pocket, or a comfortable game script. It was cold, messy, and full of pressure. Exactly the kind of environment where young quarterbacks usually crumble. Early on, it looked like the nerves might win. The offense stalled. The timing felt off. Then came the interception. The kind of mistake critics wait for, the kind that instantly wakes up every doubt that's ever followed him. For a brief stretch, it felt like the game was slipping away, and with it, another chance to prove he belonged at this level. But instead of unraveling, something clicked. Drive by drive, Shedeur settled down. His footwork got sharper, his reads got quicker, and suddenly, the same defense that had been confusing him early started getting picked apart. He hit receivers in tight windows. He stepped up under pressure. He extended plays with his legs when protection broke down. And before most people even realized what was happening, the Browns were suddenly back in striking distance. This wasn't a quiet stat-padding night either. This was a full-on workload. He threw for over 360 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, added another one on the ground. He wasn't just moving the offense, he was the offense. At one point, he was leading the team in both passing and rushing, dragging a struggling unit down the field almost by force of will. And the adversity never stopped. He lost his center mid-game. The pocket got even less stable. The weather didn't ease up. Defenses started disguising coverage late. Yet he kept responding. Each time the Browns needed a spark, it kept coming from the same place. Number 2. Late in the fourth quarter, when most rookies are just trying not to lose the game, Shedeur was trying to win it. He drove Cleveland down the field with calm, control, and confidence that didn't match his experience level. When he ran in for a touchdown and followed it up with another scoring strike, the stadium came alive in a way it hadn't in a long time. For a moment, it felt like everything the fans had been waiting for was finally happening. But despite all that production, despite the resilience, the comeback, the flashes of star power, the game still came down to one final decision that Shedeur wouldn't get to make himself. And that's where the night truly took its sharpest turn. With the game slipping into its final moments, everything suddenly tilted in Cleveland's favor. Momentum had fully shifted. The crowd was loud again. And Shedeur, after battling through mistakes, pressure and chaos, had just driven the Browns straight down the field for a late touchdown. The impossible comeback was suddenly real. All that stood between the Browns and a tied game was a single 2-point conversion. This is the moment every quarterback dreams of. Ball in hand, season on the line, trust fully earned, and for just a second, it felt like this stage belonged to Shedeur. Then the personnel jogged onto the field, and he wasn't one of them. Instead of putting the ball back in the hands of the rookie who had carried the offense all night, the coaching staff sent out a wildcat look. No quarterback under center, direct snap, one quick play to save the game. The snap was messy, the timing was off, the ball hit the ground. Game over. In real time, the stadium went silent before the shock even fully registered. On TV, you could feel the confusion through the screen. And within seconds, social media erupted. Clips of the failed attempt flooded timelines. Fans froze the moment frame by frame, asking the same question over and over again: why wasn't Shedeur on the field? Some people called it bold. Most called it reckless. Others went even further, suggesting the coaching staff panicked under pressure. And a louder, more uncomfortable theory started to spread online almost immediately, that the team was intentionally avoiding another win late in the season. Now, to be clear, those claims remain speculation. But the fact that fans even went there shows just how stunning the decision felt in the moment. When your rookie quarterback puts the team on his back for an entire half, pulling him for the most important play of the game sends a message, whether you intend it to or not. And that message didn't sit well with the fan base. Within minutes, calls for the head coach to be fired were trending. Commentators questioned the logic. Former players debated whether they would have accepted that call in the huddle. And in the middle of all that noise, one truth stood out. Regardless of what the play design was, the trust wasn't placed in Shedeur when it mattered most. That single decision instantly overshadowed everything he had just done. The passing yards, the touchdowns, the comeback drive. All of it vanished beneath one controversial snap. Instead of celebrating a breakout performance, the conversation turned into a referendum on Cleveland's coaching staff, and a growing fear that Shedeur might not be viewed as the true answer inside that building. And then, just when things were already boiling over, the story took another unexpected turn from someone much closer to home. The backlash from that two-point decision didn't just stay on sports talk shows and social media timelines. It followed Shedeur straight into the most personal corners of his life, and that's when the situation truly exploded. Not long after the loss, Shedeur's mother reacted publicly. Her frustration was raw, emotional, and exactly what many Browns fans were already feeling. To her, it looked like her son had carried the team on his back all night, only to be sidelined when the game demanded courage and trust the most. While her words reflected a mother's perspective, the internet treated them like gasoline on an already raging fire. Within minutes, Browns fans locked onto that reaction as proof that something behind the scenes wasn't right. Timelines filled with screenshots, reposts, and heated takes. Some fans defended the coaching staff, arguing that the play was simply a misfire. But far more people saw it as confirmation of what they were already starting to believe, that Shedeur may not actually be the organization's true long-term plan. Calls for the head coach to be fired grew louder. Accusations of ego, stubbornness, and poor leadership flooded comment sections, and the mood around the team shifted from disappointment to distrust almost overnight. Inside the locker room, things weren't exactly silent either. Reporters immediately began pressing players about the final decision. Some gave careful, neutral answers. Others looked uncomfortable, even addressing it. You could feel the tension in every post-game quote. The kind of tension that doesn't come from a normal loss, but from confusion about leadership and direction. And then there was Shedeur himself. With everyone else losing control of the narrative around him, the rookie quarterback took a very different approach. Instead of criticizing the call, instead of showing frustration, instead of pointing fingers, he went the opposite direction. Calm, faith-based, accountable, almost shockingly composed for someone who had just been pulled from the biggest play of his young career. That contrast only made the situation feel stranger. While his mother, the fans, and the internet were in full meltdown mode, Shedeur was publicly choosing restraint. And that raised a new question that no one had asked before. Was he simply being the ultimate professional? Or was he already learning how to swallow moments that shouldn't have been taken from him? Either way, the pressure on him didn't ease. It multiplied, because now it wasn't just about football anymore. It was about family, trust, power, and whether this rookie quarterback was slowly being placed in the middle of a situation that could shape his entire career. And what he would say next would only deepen the mystery. With emotions running high everywhere else, all eyes eventually turned to the one person everyone expected to be the most upset: Shedeur himself. Reporters crowded around him after the game, waiting for frustration, disappointment, maybe even a subtle shot at the coaching staff. After everything that had just happened, most people assumed the tension would finally spill out. It didn't. Instead, Shedeur delivered one of the calmest, most controlled post-game interviews of any rookie in recent memory. When asked about the final drives and the failed two-point attempt, he didn't shift blame. He didn't demand the ball back. He didn't question the coaches. He simply said he was thankful for the opportunity to drive the team down the field, and that sometimes football doesn't go the way you script it. He explained that every play is practiced with the expectation of success, and when it doesn't work, you live with it and move forward. Then he did something that surprised even seasoned reporters. He took responsibility for earlier mistakes, including the botched snap on the first two-point try that resulted in a fumble. He openly admitted that part was on him. No excuses, no deflection, just accountability. Asked how he stayed mentally sharp after the interception earlier in the game, Shedeur didn't talk about film or mechanics. He talked about faith. He said that when confusion and adversity pile up, that's when he leans on God the most to keep his mind clear. He described the game as mental, saying that once your head slips, everything else follows. That response alone shifted the tone of the room. When the conversation turned to his teammate, who he had recently had visible tension with earlier in the season, Shedeur again chose forgiveness over drama. He spoke about putting everything aside, trusting each other, and playing without negativity or hate in their hearts. He framed it as a spiritual reset for the entire offense. And then came the most telling line of the night. When asked if he felt more in command of the team now, he said he's become comfortable being uncomfortable. That discomfort, he explained, is part of his story, part of what makes it meaningful, part of what allows him to push through adversity even when the situation feels unfair. For a rookie who had just watched the biggest play of the game happen without him on the field, that level of emotional control was rare, and it left a lot of people wondering, is Shedeur quietly accepting a role that's being shaped around him without his control? Or is he simply building the mental armor he knows he'll need for what's coming next? Because as composed as he looked at the podium, the storm around his future was only getting louder. While Shedeur was taking the professional route at the podium, a very different conversation was heating up behind the scenes. Almost immediately after the loss, reports, whispers, and online speculation began circling around one uncomfortable topic: Deshaun Watson. For months, the Browns' quarterback room has felt like a ticking clock. On one side, you have Shedeur, the electric rookie drawing energy from the fan base. On the other, you have Watson, the veteran with a massive contract and a reputation that still divides the locker room and the city. The organization invested heavily in Watson long before Shedeur ever arrived, and that investment doesn't disappear easily. According to reports and insider chatter, the Browns have been wrestling with a difficult reality: financial commitment versus on-field momentum. Watson's contract makes him hard to move on from quickly, but Shedeur's recent performances have made it even harder to ignore the shift in public opinion. Fans, at least, are beginning to pick a side, and that's where the power struggle rumors start to creep in. Some observers believe that the bizarre two-point decision was simply a bad call in a high-pressure moment. Others aren't so convinced. Online theories suggest it may have been an indirect sign that the coaching staff still views Shedeur as a temporary answer rather than the centerpiece of the franchise. Those theories remain unproven, but the fact that they've gained so much traction says everything about the current tension surrounding the position. Even the head coach's recent comments haven't helped smooth things over. In the days surrounding the game, he spoke about play-calling control and decision-making in a way that some fans interpreted as distancing himself from the rookie. Nothing overt was said, nothing directly critical. But in a city already sensitive to quarterback controversy, tone matters, and many felt the tone was off. Meanwhile, every snap Shedeur takes is now being judged through a different lens. It's no longer just about development, it's about direction. Is Cleveland building toward a future with him, or simply riding out a temporary surge while waiting to revert to their original plan? Is the organization protecting a massive financial investment, or finally preparing to embrace a new one? Right now, those questions don't have clear answers. Officially, the team remains publicly supportive. Unofficially, uncertainty continues to hang over everything. And for Shedeur, that uncertainty may be the heaviest opponent he'll face all season. Because when a rookie starts winning over a fan base while the front office is still undecided, history shows one thing: It rarely stays quiet for long, and what's coming next might force the franchise to make a decision sooner than they want. Even with all the controversy swirling around him, one thing is quietly becoming impossible to ignore. Shedeur Sanders is putting his name in places most rookies never reach this early. The numbers from his recent performances aren't just promising, they're entering rare territory. High-volume passing, multi-touchdown games, command at the line of scrimmage, it usually takes years to develop. While the debates rage online, the stat sheet keeps writing its own argument in his favor. But numbers alone don't explain why the spotlight on Shedeur feels heavier than on almost any other young quarterback in the league. That weight starts with his last name. Being Deion Sanders' son does two things at once. It opens doors and multiplies pressure. Every success is expected. Every mistake is amplified. When most rookies struggle, it's chalked up to growing pains. When Shedeur struggles, it becomes a headline, a debate, a test of legacy. People aren't just measuring him against his draft class, they're measuring him against history. And through all of it, the one constant in his public life has been faith. In his post-game comments, after one of the most chaotic nights of his career, he didn't talk about being robbed of a moment. He talked about God clearing his mind, about praying through confusion, about finding peace in discomfort. That mindset isn't just a soundbite. It's the framework he's been leaning on long before the NFL ever entered the picture. It's also what separates his response from the noise around him. While fans argue about trust and coaches argue about decisions, Shedeur's focus has stayed narrow. Improve, reset, move forward. He openly admits he hasn't played a perfect game. He speaks about timing, anticipation, missed throws, communication. The little details. The invisible work. That approach, equal parts confidence and humility, has quietly earned him respect inside the locker room, even from veterans who once outranked him on the depth chart. But faith doesn't make the pressure disappear. Instead of carrying the weight of just the Browns' expectations, he's carrying the weight of an entire narrative. Is he the future face of a franchise that's been searching for stability for decades? Or is he just another chapter in Cleveland's long list of almost answers at quarterback? Every snap, every interview, every controversial call adds another layer to that question. And with each game, the margin between potential and proven grows thinner. Because at some point, performances stop being about development and start demanding commitment from the people making the decisions. And that brings the story to its most uncomfortable reality yet. When you strip away the stats, the debates, the social media chaos, and the post-game headlines, what's left is a much simpler and much heavier truth about Shedeur Sanders right now. He did everything a young quarterback is supposed to do to earn trust. He fought through early mistakes. He adjusted under pressure. He carried a struggling offense. He led a late comeback. He stayed calm in public when most players would have shown frustration. And he walked off the field having given Cleveland more hope than it's felt in a long time. Yet somehow, his future with the Browns still feels uncertain. That's the uncomfortable part of this story, because while fans are already imagining what this team could look like if Shedeur is fully embraced, the organization itself hasn't clearly shown that same commitment. The final play of the game wasn't just a failed two-point attempt. To many people, it felt like a glimpse into how fragile his status inside the building still is. Right now, Cleveland sits in a strange place. They have a rookie quarterback who is winning over the fan base in real time. They also have a massive financial investment tied to another quarterback whose future remains complicated. And in the middle of that tension stands Shedeur, trying to prove he belongs without ever being told, with certainty, that the job is truly his. This is how careers quietly get shaped. Some quarterbacks get handed the keys and told, "This is your team." Others are made to earn it every single week under a microscope. And Shedeur appears to be living in the second category, where one mistake is louder than 10 great plays, and one coaching decision can change the entire narrative. The most striking part is this. Despite all the noise, Shedeur isn't running from the pressure. He's absorbing it. He's studying. He's improving. He's preparing like someone who knows the spotlight isn't dimming anytime soon. The question isn't whether he has the talent. The real question is whether Cleveland is finally ready to stop hesitating and fully lean into what's unfolding right in front of them. Because in the NFL, windows don't stay open for long. And if the Browns don't decide soon what they truly believe about Shedeur Sanders, the rest of the league eventually will.